This mansion was not built to impress visitors. It was built to control systems. Behind its walls, decisions were made that reshaped American industry, rewrote the rules of capitalism, and redefined the meaning of wealth itself. This was not just the home of John D. Rockefeller. It was the architecture of power. In the Gilded Age, when fortunes were rising faster than laws could follow, this estate became a quiet command center, where oil, railroads, philanthropy, and political influence converged into something far larger than any single man. This film is not about luxury. It is about structure. It is about authority. It is about the unseen design of modern America. And it all begins with a house. At the turn of the 20th century, as the United States crossed an invisible threshold between agrarian republic and industrial empire, architecture became a language of power. The great mansions rising along Fifth Avenue, overlooking the Hudson, and dominating private enclaves were not merely homes. They were spatial declarations, built environments meant to embody permanence, command, and the authority of a new ruling class forged not by bloodline, but by capital. Among these structures, none carried greater symbolic weight than the Rockefeller family's urban and country estates, especially the vast residences that emerged as Standard Oil consolidated control over the nation's energy economy. These mansions were not decorative indulgences alone. They were instruments of legitimacy, constructed at a moment when wealth was newly concentrated, intensely scrutinized, and deeply contested. Through stone, scale, and spatial organization, they sought to stabilize a social order reshaped by railroads, refineries, and finance. The late 19th century was a period of unprecedented economic acceleration. Between the end of the Civil War and the dawn of the 20th century, the United States transformed from a fractured union into the world's leading industrial economy. Railroads stitched together distant markets. Steel production multiplied. Cities expanded at explosive rates. Immense fortunes were created in industries that had not existed a generation earlier. Oil, once a regional curiosity used primarily for illumination, became the fuel of modern life. Refineries replaced wells as the centers of profit. Distribution networks eclipsed extraction. Control of transportation and pricing, rather than ownership of land, became the foundation of economic power. It was within this system that John D. Rockefeller rose, not through invention, but through organization, consolidation, and the relentless pursuit of efficiency. Rockefeller's ascent was inseparable from the logic of industrial capitalism itself. Born in 1839 into a modest family in upstate New York, he entered the oil trade in Cleveland in the 1860s, just as petroleum markets were shifting from speculative chaos towards centralized coordination. His company, which would become Standard Oil, pioneered methods of vertical integration, securing control over refining, transportation, storage, and distribution. Through aggressive negotiations with railroads, systematic price undercutting, and the absorption of competitors, Rockefeller assembled a network of operations that by the 1870s dominated the American oil industry. This dominance was not merely economic, it was structural. It shaped how energy moved across the nation, how industries functioned, and how cities were lit and powered. Yet industrial dominance alone did not guarantee social legitimacy. In a society still deeply shaped by Republican ideals, inherited aristocracy, and Protestant moral frameworks, immense wealth generated through monopolistic practices was morally ambiguous. The public did not universally celebrate the rise of industrial titans. Journalists, politicians, and labor leaders increasingly questioned the methods and consequences of corporate consolidation. Antitrust sentiment gained traction. Strikes erupted across the industrial landscape. Newspapers exposed corporate corruption and exploitation. Rockefeller's fortune, enormous even by Gilded Age standards, became both a symbol of American possibility and a focal point of public resentment. It was in this environment that architecture assumed its political function. For families like the Rockefellers, building a mansion was not simply about comfort or aesthetic taste. It was a way to convert economic power into cultural authority. It was a means of embedding wealth into the physical and visual fabric of the nation, making it appear stable, inherited, and enduring. Stone replaced balance sheets. Symmetry replaced volatility. Formal gardens replaced market uncertainty. Through architecture, industrial fortunes were translated into spatial permanence. One of the most significant expressions of this transformation was the Rockefeller family's country estate at Pocantico Hills in Westchester County, New York. Acquired in the 1890s and gradually expanded over decades, the estate became not only a residence, but a private domain, an enclosed landscape where wealth could be staged, regulated, and symbolically controlled. The main house, known as Kaikouit, was constructed on a commanding hilltop overlooking the Hudson River Valley. Its position was deliberate. From its terraces, one could see the river that had carried commerce and empire for centuries. From below, the mansion appeared as a crown atop the land, asserting both dominance over the surrounding terrain and alignment with older traditions of landed power. The architecture of Kaikouit was not ostentatious in the flamboyant manner of some contemporaneous mansions, such as the Vanderbilt Palaces or the Newport Cottages. Instead, it was restrained, symmetrical, and classical, drawing on Renaissance and Georgian traditions associated with stability, order, and inherited authority. Its limestone exterior, formal gardens, and axial layouts conveyed permanence rather than spectacle. The mansion did not seek to dazzle the public eye so much as to project inevitability. It was designed not to provoke admiration, but to normalize power. Inside, the spatial organization reinforced this message. Public rooms were arranged to facilitate controlled social interaction. Dining rooms, libraries, drawing rooms, and galleries arranged in sequences that guided movement and behavior. Service corridors, staff quarters, and mechanical systems were concealed, ensuring that the labor sustaining the household remained invisible. The architecture embodied a hierarchy not only of wealth, but of function, separating those who inhabited the mansion from those who enabled its operation. This spatial segregation mirrored the broader industrial order, in which ownership and labor occupied increasingly distant positions within economic systems. Yet the mansion was not merely a private retreat, it functioned as a site of political and cultural influence. At Pocantico Hills, Rockefeller entertained business partners, politicians, philanthropists, and religious leaders. Conversations held within its walls shaped decisions about investments, donations, and public policy. The mansion became a setting in which industrial power was reframed as moral authority, where wealth was recast as stewardship. The architecture did not merely house influence, it amplified it. This transformation of wealth into legitimacy was deeply connected to Rockefeller's religious convictions. A devout Baptist, Rockefeller believed in the moral responsibility of wealth, subscribing to a philosophy that viewed economic success as both a sign of divine favor and a burden of obligation. He did not conceive of his fortune as purely personal property, but as a trust to be administered for the benefit of society. This belief underpinned his extensive philanthropic activities, which included funding educational institutions, medical research, and religious organizations. The architecture of his residences reflected this ethos. They were not theatrical displays of indulgence, but environments structured around discipline, order, and moral self-regulation. Yet this moral framing did not erase the contradictions inherent in the source of his wealth. Standard Oil's methods, rebates, price wars, corporate absorption, were widely criticized as predatory. The company's scale and influence prompted the development of antitrust law, culminating in the 1911 Supreme Court decision that ordered its dissolution into multiple independent companies. This legal action marked a critical moment in the relationship between private wealth and public authority. It signaled that industrial power, however vast, was subject to legal limits. Yet even as Standard Oil was dismantled, the Rockefeller fortune remained intact, redistributed across successor corporations that continued to dominate the energy sector. The mansion at Pocantico Hills, like the fortune itself, endured beyond the dissolution of Standard Oil. It became a multi-generational estate, housing successive members of the Rockefeller family and evolving alongside their shifting roles in American society. Under John D. Rockefeller Jr., the estate expanded not only physically, but symbolically. Jr. assumed a more public role than his father, engaging more directly with political leaders, labor negotiations, and international diplomacy. His management of family wealth reflected a broader transformation in elite identity, moving from industrial accumulation toward institutional influence. The architecture of Kaikouet adapted accordingly. Art collections were expanded, formal gardens were redesigned, new buildings were added, including recreational facilities, galleries, and support structures. The estate became a curated environment, blending private residence with cultural institution. It housed not only family life, but also artistic, philanthropic, and political activity. The mansion thus evolved from a symbol of industrial consolidation into a platform for global influence. This evolution mirrored the broader transformation of American capitalism in the early 20th century. As the nation moved from unregulated industrial expansion toward a more institutionalized economic system, wealth increasingly flowed through foundations, universities, research institutions, and international organizations. The Rockefellers were central to this shift. They funded the University of Chicago, the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research, and later the Rockefeller Foundation, which would play a major role in global public health, education, and scientific research. These institutions extended the family's influence far beyond oil, embedding their wealth within the infrastructure of knowledge and governance. The mansion at Pocantico Hills was not isolated from this process. It functioned as a headquarters of sorts, a place where strategies were discussed, initiatives planned, and networks cultivated. Its architecture, therefore, cannot be understood solely as domestic design. It was an institutional space, a private seat of public power. The boundaries between home, office, and political forum were deliberately blurred, allowing wealth to operate across multiple domains without appearing overtly political. This blending of private and public authority was characteristic of the Gilded Age and Progressive Era elite. Lacking formal aristocratic titles, American industrialists constructed alternative forms of legitimacy through philanthropy, cultural patronage, and architectural grandeur. Their mansions became modern equivalents of European estates, serving as sites of social reproduction, where values, networks, and authority were transmitted across generations. The Rockefeller estate embodied this function with particular clarity, combining economic discipline, moral rhetoric, and spatial authority into a unified environment. Yet the very permanence of such architecture stood in tension with the volatility of the industrial system that produced it. The late 19th and early 20th centuries were periods of repeated economic crises, including the Panic of 1873, the Panic of 1893, and the Panic of 1907. Each crisis exposed the fragility of financial markets and the human costs of economic contraction. Unemployment surged, wages fell, banks collapsed. Trust in industrial capitalism fluctuated. In this context, the solidity of stone mansions contrasted sharply with the instability experienced by millions of workers. Architecture thus became not only a symbol of wealth, but also a marker of inequality. Public perception of Rockefeller and his family reflected this contradiction. On one hand, he was widely criticized as a monopolist whose practices harmed competitors and consumers. On the other hand, he was admired for his discipline, philanthropy, and apparent personal modesty. His residences, including Kaikouet, played a subtle role in shaping this perception. Their restrained elegance, classical proportions, and emphasis on order communicated values of stability and self-control, countering accusations of greed and excess. The architecture did not deny wealth, it normalized it. This normalization was not merely aesthetic, it was social. By hosting gatherings of political leaders, intellectuals, and cultural figures, the Rockefeller estate positioned the family within the moral and intellectual leadership of the nation. It became a place where industrial capital intersected with religious thought, academic research, and public policy. The mansion thus served as a bridge between economic power and cultural authority, facilitating the integration of new wealth into the traditional structures of influence. The spatial logic of the estate reinforced this integration. Formal gardens created controlled environments where nature itself appeared ordered, disciplined, and harmonious. Terraces and axial pathways guided movement and perspective, shaping how visitors experienced the landscape and the architecture. Views were framed deliberately, emphasizing balance, proportion, and continuity. These design choices were not incidental. They reflected a worldview in which disorder was to be contained, volatility managed, and complexity rendered legible. The estate was a microcosm of the industrial system itself, translated into stone, soil, and spatial arrangement. Inside the mansion, art collections further reinforced this worldview. Works from European traditions, particularly Renaissance and classical periods, link the family to older narratives of cultural achievement and civilizational continuity. These collections were not mere decorations, they were symbolic assets, positioning the family within a lineage of cultural patronage that extended beyond commerce. By surrounding themselves with objects associated with historical refinement and intellectual authority, the Rockefellers inscribed their wealth into a longer temporal horizon, one that extended backward into European cultural history and forward into American institutional life. Yet the mansion also concealed as much as it revealed. The labor that sustained the estate, gardeners, maids, cooks, drivers, maintenance workers, remained largely invisible within its architectural narrative. Their quarters were spatially separated, their movements carefully regulated. This invisibility mirrored the broader industrial system, in which labor was increasingly abstracted from the centers of power. Just as shareholders and executives rarely encountered factory floors, residents and guests of the mansion rarely encountered the workers who sustained their environment. Architecture thus participated in the social separation that defined industrial capitalism. This separation did not eliminate conflict. The early 20th century was marked by intense labor struggles, including strikes in steel, coal, textiles, and railroads. Rockefeller himself became a central figure in one of the most significant labor conflicts of the era. The Ludlow Massacre of 1914, which occurred at a coal mining camp in Colorado, owned by a Rockefeller-controlled company. The violent suppression of striking miners and their families resulted in widespread public outrage and forced the Rockefeller family to confront the human consequences of industrial power. Although the massacre occurred far from Pocantico Hills, its implications reverberated through the family's institutions and residences. It underscored the tension between architectural serenity and social unrest, between spatial order and economic conflict. In the aftermath of Ludlow, John D. Rockefeller Jr. undertook significant reforms in labor relations and corporate governance. He engaged directly with workers, supported the development of industrial relations programs, and sought to reshape the public image of the family's enterprises. These efforts reflected a broader shift in elite strategy, moving from confrontational consolidation toward institutional management and social partnership. The mansion at Pocantico Hills, as a site of planning and reflection, played a role in this transformation. It became a place where new approaches to industrial governance were discussed, debated, and institutionalized. Over time, the symbolic function of the estate expanded further. In the mid-20th century, as the Rockefeller family's influence extended into international affairs, global health, and cultural diplomacy, the mansion became part of a transnational network of power. Visitors included diplomats, scholars, scientists, and cultural leaders from around the world. The estate's architecture, gardens, and collections provided a setting in which American industrial wealth could present itself as cosmopolitan, enlightened, and globally engaged. The mansion thus became not only a symbol of domestic authority, but also an instrument of international influence. This transformation reflected the broader evolution of American power. By the mid-20th century, the United States had emerged as a global superpower, its economic, military, and cultural influence extending across continents. The fortunes accumulated during the Gilded Age underwrote many of the institutions that supported this global role, from universities and research laboratories to international organizations and cultural exchanges. The Rockefeller family, through its foundations and initiatives, was deeply involved in this process. The mansion at Pocantico Hills, as a physical embodiment of the family's wealth and authority, thus became part of a global narrative, linking domestic industrial history to international governance. Yet even as its function evolved, the mansion retained its original symbolic core. It remained a spatial expression of the relationship between wealth and power, between private capital and public influence. Its architecture continued to communicate permanence, order, and legitimacy, even as the social and economic systems it represented underwent profound change. The estate thus serves as a lens through which to examine the transformation of American capitalism itself, from industrial consolidation to institutional governance, from domestic accumulation to global influence. In examining this transformation, it is essential to recognize that the mansion was not an isolated phenomenon. It was part of a broader architectural landscape that included other elite residences, corporate headquarters, public institutions, and cultural landmarks. Together, these structures formed a physical infrastructure of power, embedding economic authority into the built environment. Yet the Rockefeller estate stands out for the clarity with which it articulates the relationship between architecture and industrial power. It does not merely reflect wealth, it interprets it. It translates economic dominance into spatial order, moral authority, and cultural legitimacy. This translation was not automatic. It required deliberate choices about design, location, materials, and use. It required ongoing maintenance, adaptation, and reinterpretation. It required the participation of architects, landscape designers, art curators, and administrators, all working to sustain the narrative embodied by the estate. Architecture, in this sense, was not a static object, but a dynamic process, continually reshaped to align with shifting social and political realities. As the 20th century progressed, the estate increasingly opened to public engagement, both formally and informally. Portions of the property became accessible to visitors. Art collections were shared with museums. Educational programs and cultural events were hosted on the grounds. These developments reflected a broader shift in elite identity, moving from private dominance toward public stewardship. The mansion, once a symbol of private authority, became partially integrated into the public cultural landscape. Yet even in this openness, its original function as a site of power remained evident. The estate continued to embody the enduring influence of industrial wealth, even as its expressions evolved. The mansion's endurance invites reflection on the nature of power itself. Economic systems rise and fall, industries emerge and decline, political regimes transform, yet certain structures persist, carrying forward the legacies of earlier eras. The Rockefeller estate, like many elite residences of the Gilded Age, survives not only as a historical artifact, but as an active participant in contemporary cultural life. Its continued existence testifies to the lasting impact of industrial fortunes and the ways in which architecture can extend influence across generations. In this sense, the mansion is not merely a relic of the past. It is a living environment shaped by ongoing decisions about preservation, interpretation, and use. How it is presented, who is allowed to enter, and what narratives are emphasized all influence how the history of industrial power is understood. The estate thus remains a site of historical negotiation, where meanings are contested, revised, and rearticulated. To understand the full significance of the mansion, one must therefore consider not only its original construction, but its subsequent evolution. One must examine how its spaces have been used, how its narratives have been framed, and how its symbolic functions have shifted over time. Only by tracing these transformations can one fully grasp the relationship between architecture, wealth, and power that the estate embodies. This relationship is neither simple nor static. It is shaped by social conflict, political reform, cultural change, and economic transformation. It reflects the tensions inherent in industrial capitalism, between accumulation and legitimacy, between private interest and public responsibility, between stability and change. The mansion stands at the intersection of these forces, offering a spatial record of their interaction. As we move deeper into the story of Rockefeller wealth and American industrial power, the mansion serves as our point of entry, not because it contains all the answers, but because it crystallizes the questions. How did private capital become public authority? How did industrial dominance translate into cultural legitimacy? How did architecture mediate the relationship between wealth and society? These questions do not belong solely to the past. They continue to shape the present as new forms of wealth and power seek their own architectural expressions. In the chapters that follow, we will trace the historical forces that gave rise to this estate, the individuals who shaped it, and the broader systems it both reflected and influenced. We will examine the industrial structures that produced Rockefeller wealth, the legal and political battles that contested it, and the philanthropic institutions that sought to redefine it. We will explore how architecture functioned as both symbol and instrument within this process, shaping not only physical space but social relations and historical memory. For now, the mansion stands before us as a threshold, a place where the abstract forces of industrial capitalism take concrete form, where wealth becomes visible, and where power acquires spatial dimension. It invites us to look beyond its walls, beyond its gardens, and beyond its art, toward the systems of production, governance, and culture that made it possible. It invites us to consider not only what was built, but why and with what consequences. The mansion's presence at Pocantico Hills cannot be separated from the industrial system that produced it, nor from the social upheavals that system generated. While its stone terraces and formal gardens projected permanence, the economic foundations beneath them were volatile, contested, and in constant negotiation with public authority. To understand the full meaning of the estate, it is necessary to trace the structure of Rockefeller's wealth beyond architecture into the machinery of oil production, transportation, finance, and governance that reshaped the American economy in the late 19th century. Standard Oil's rise was not merely the story of one company's success, but a transformation in how industries were organized. Before the 1870s, oil refining was fragmented, unstable, and speculative. Prices fluctuated wildly. Producers competed destructively. Transportation costs were unpredictable. Rockefeller's innovation lay in replacing this chaos with coordination. Through systematic cost-cutting, centralized accounting, standardized production, and aggressive negotiation with railroads, Standard Oil created an integrated system capable of stabilizing prices and ensuring steady profits. This integration extended beyond technical efficiency. It involved acquiring competitors, consolidating market share, and reshaping the industry structure itself. These practices generated extraordinary wealth. By the 1880s, Standard Oil controlled approximately 90% of the nation's refining capacity. Its profits flowed into a complex web of trusts, holding companies, and investment vehicles designed to manage assets across multiple states and jurisdictions. Rockefeller became not only a business leader, but a financial architect, constructing corporate structures that would influence American capitalism for generations. Yet this concentration of power provoked widespread concern. Critics argued that monopolies distorted markets, suppressed competition, and undermined democratic institutions. The public debate over Standard Oil was not simply economic, it was moral and political, questioning whether industrial capitalism could coexist with Republican values. Architecture in this context became a form of response. The Rockefeller estate did not advertise corporate dominance directly. It did not display oil derricks, refineries, or pipelines. Instead, it presented an image of cultivated stability, religious devotion, and moral seriousness. The mansion's classical design, its restrained ornamentation, and its emphasis on order and symmetry communicated a vision of wealth as disciplined and legitimate rather than chaotic or exploitative. This vision aligned with Rockefeller's self-presentation as a steward of wealth rather than a mere accumulator. Yet the tension between this narrative and the realities of industrial labor remained unresolved. The labor system that sustained Rockefeller's wealth was built on long hours, dangerous working conditions, and limited protections. Oil refineries, railroads, steel mills, and coal mines employed hundreds of thousands of workers whose lives were shaped by industrial discipline and economic insecurity. Wages fluctuated with market conditions. Injuries were common. Unemployment followed economic downturns. Labor unions emerged as a response to these conditions, seeking collective bargaining rights, improved safety standards, and political recognition. Rockefeller's involvement in labor conflict reached its most visible and tragic expression in the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company, a coal and steel enterprise in which the Rockefeller family held a controlling interest. In 1913, miners employed by the company went on strike, demanding recognition of their union, enforcement of labor laws, and improved living conditions. The strike escalated into a prolonged confrontation between workers, company guards, and state militia. On April 20th, 1914, violence erupted at the Ludlow tent colony, where striking miners and their families were living after being evicted from company housing. The confrontation resulted in the deaths of several miners, women, and children, and became one of the most notorious episodes in American labor history. The Ludlow Massacre exposed the human cost of industrial consolidation in stark terms. It shattered the image of corporate benevolence and intensified public scrutiny of industrial power. For the Rockefeller family, the event represented a moral and political crisis. John D. Rockefeller Jr., who oversaw the family's industrial interests, was widely criticized for his perceived indifference to workers' suffering. Newspapers, politicians, and labor leaders demanded accountability. The conflict forced the family to confront the limits of their moral narrative and the consequences of their economic structures. In response, Rockefeller Jr. embarked on a program of reform that would reshape corporate governance and labor relations. He engaged directly with workers, traveling to Colorado to meet with miners and listen to their grievances. He supported the development of industrial relations programs that emphasized communication, representation, and welfare within corporate structures. These efforts did not eliminate conflict or transform the fundamental dynamics of industrial capitalism, but they marked a shift in elite strategy, acknowledging the need to address labor relations not solely through force or legal authority, but through institutional reform. The mansion at Pocantico Hills became a setting for these reflections and reforms. It was within its walls that strategies were discussed, policies debated, and new approaches to corporate responsibility developed. The estate thus functioned not only as a symbol of wealth, but as a laboratory for governance, where industrial power was reinterpreted in light of social responsibility. Architecture, in this sense, did not merely conceal conflict. It provided a space for its management and negotiation. This role of the mansion as a site of governance extended beyond labor relations. As the Rockefeller family's philanthropic activities expanded, the estate became increasingly integrated into the administration of foundations, educational institutions, and research organizations. The University of Chicago, founded with Rockefeller support in 1890, became one of the nation's leading centers of academic research. The Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research, established in 1901, advanced scientific knowledge and public health. Later, the Rockefeller Foundation, created in 1913, pursued global initiatives in education, medicine, agriculture, and social science. These institutions represented a new form of power, one that operated through knowledge production, institutional authority, and international networks. The mansion provided a physical and symbolic anchor for these initiatives. It was a place where trustees met, strategies were formulated, and alliances forged. Its architecture, emphasizing stability, order, and continuity, reinforced the legitimacy of these institutions in their claims to public service. The estate thus became a nexus where private wealth was transformed into public influence, where industrial capital was converted into institutional authority. This transformation reflected broader changes in American society during the Progressive Era. Reform movements sought to address the social consequences of industrialization through regulation, social welfare programs, and institutional innovation. Antitrust laws were enacted to limit monopolies. Labor protections were introduced to improve working conditions. Public health initiatives were developed to combat disease and improve urban living standards. Educational reforms expanded access to schooling and higher education. These efforts represented an attempt to reconcile industrial capitalism with democratic governance and social stability. The Rockefeller family's philanthropic institutions were deeply embedded in this reformist context. They funded research, education, and social programs that aligned with progressive ideals, while also shaping the direction and scope of reform. This dual role, both supporting and influencing reform, illustrates the complex relationship between private wealth and public policy. Philanthropy did not merely compensate for the harms of industrialization. It also participated in defining the solutions, often in ways that reflected elite priorities and perspectives. The mansion at Pocantico Hills symbolized this dual role. It was both a product of industrial wealth and a site from which reformist initiatives were launched. Its architecture embodied the tension between private authority and public responsibility, between accumulation and redistribution, between power and service. The estate thus offers a lens through which to examine the evolving relationship between capital and society in early 20th century America. This relationship was not static. It evolved in response to political, economic, and cultural change. The dissolution of Standard Oil in 1911 marked a turning point in the legal regulation of industrial power. The emergence of federal regulatory agencies, such as the Federal Trade Commission, institutionalized oversight of corporate behavior. The expansion of labor rights, social insurance programs, and public infrastructure reshaped the social contract between citizens and the state. These developments altered the context in which industrial wealth operated, redefining the boundaries between private enterprise and public authority. The Rockefeller family adapted to these changes by shifting their focus from direct industrial control to institutional governance and philanthropic leadership. While they retained significant financial interests, their public identity increasingly centered on their foundations, cultural patronage, and global initiatives. The mansion at Pocantico Hills evolved accordingly, becoming less a symbol of industrial conquest and more a center of institutional coordination. Its architecture, once a statement of private dominance, became a backdrop for public service and international engagement. Yet the estate's origins in industrial consolidation continued to shape its meaning. The very institutions it supported, universities, research centers, foundations, were funded by wealth derived from monopolistic practices that had provoked public backlash and legal intervention. This historical continuity complicates narratives of philanthropic benevolence, reminding us that institutional authority often rests on economic foundations shaped by conflict, inequality, and power struggles. The mansion, as a physical embodiment of these foundations, carries within it the traces of these tensions. The estate's gardens, designed with meticulous attention to order and symmetry, offer a particularly revealing metaphor. Their formal layouts, controlled vistas, and carefully maintained landscapes reflect a vision of nature as manageable, predictable, and subordinated to human design. This vision parallels the industrial logic that sought to rationalize production, control markets, and standardize processes. Yet beneath this surface order lies a complex ecological and social reality, shaped by labor, resources, and environmental impact. The gardens, like the mansion itself, thus represent both mastery and concealment, order and omission. Inside the mansion, the arrangement of rooms further reinforces this metaphor. Public spaces are designed to facilitate controlled interaction, while private spaces offer retreat and reflection. Service areas are hidden, ensuring that the labor sustaining the household remains invisible. This spatial organization mirrors the broader industrial system, in which decision-making and control are centralized, while labor and production are dispersed and obscured. Architecture thus participates in the social organization of power, shaping not only physical movement, but social relations and perceptions. The estate's art collections deepen this narrative. By acquiring and displaying works associated with European cultural traditions, the Rockefellers align themselves with established narratives of civilization, refinement, and intellectual authority. These collections serve not only aesthetic purposes, but symbolic ones, positioning the family within a lineage of cultural patronage that extended beyond commerce. Art became a means of translating economic power into cultural capital, reinforcing the legitimacy of wealth through association with historical achievement. This translation was particularly significant in a society that lacked formal aristocracy. In the absence of inherited titles and landed estates, American elites constructed alternative forms of distinction through education, philanthropy, and cultural patronage. Mansions like Kikuit functioned as substitutes for European estates, providing spatial contexts in which elite identity could be cultivated and reproduced. The Rockefeller estate, with its combination of architecture, landscape, art, and institutional function, exemplifies this process. Yet the reproduction of elite identity was not merely cultural, it was institutional. The estate supported networks of influence that extended into politics, academia, medicine, and international affairs. Trustees, scholars, diplomats, and policymakers gathered within its walls, shaping decisions that affected millions of people. The mansion thus functioned as a node within a broader network of power, connecting private wealth to public outcomes. Its architecture facilitated these connections, providing spaces for deliberation, negotiation, and consensus building. This institutional role became increasingly prominent during the mid-20th century as the Rockefeller family's influence expanded into global governance. Through their foundations, they supported initiatives in public health, agriculture, and education across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. They contributed to the development of international organizations, including the United Nations, whose headquarters would later be constructed on land donated by John D. Rockefeller Jr. in New York City. This donation itself can be understood as an architectural gesture, embedding private wealth into the physical infrastructure of global governance. The connection between architecture and power thus extended beyond the mansion at Pocantico Hills, encompassing urban landscapes, institutional campuses, and international sites. Yet the estate remained a symbolic core, a physical manifestation of the family's historical trajectory from industrial consolidation to institutional leadership. It served as a reminder of the origins of their influence and the transformations it had undergone. This trajectory invites reflection on the nature of legitimacy itself. How does wealth acquire moral authority? How does private power become public influence? How do architectural spaces mediate these transformations? The Rockefeller Mansion does not provide definitive answers, but it offers a case study in the complex processes through which economic dominance is translated into cultural and institutional legitimacy. These processes are neither automatic nor uncontested. They are shaped by social conflict, legal intervention, cultural negotiation, and political reform. The mansion stands at the intersection of these forces, embodying both the achievements and the contradictions of American industrial capitalism. It represents the capacity of wealth to create enduring structures, but also the necessity of continual adaptation in response to social change. As we move further into this narrative, we will examine how these dynamics unfolded across generations, how the Rockefeller family navigated shifting political landscapes, and how their architectural and institutional legacy evolved in response to new challenges. We will explore the ways in which their wealth shaped not only physical spaces, but social institutions, cultural narratives, and global systems. Through this exploration, the mansion will remain our reference point, a tangible embodiment of the relationship between wealth, power, and society. For now, it stands as a testament to a particular moment in American history, when industrial capitalism reached unprecedented heights and confronted its own social consequences. Its stone walls and ordered gardens speak of stability and control, yet they are also inscribed with the traces of conflict, reform, and transformation. To understand the mansion fully, we must continue to examine these layers, tracing how architecture both reflects and shapes the forces of history. As the 20th century advanced, the Rockefeller Mansion at Pocantico Hills became not merely a symbol of inherited wealth, but a living institution through which power was organized, redistributed, and legitimized across new domains. The transformation of American capitalism, from an era dominated by industrial consolidation to one shaped increasingly by finance, governance, and global institutions, was mirrored in the changing functions of the estate. What had begun as a private residence and social anchor evolved into a strategic center for philanthropy, diplomacy, and cultural authority. This transformation coincided with a generational shift in leadership. John D. Rockefeller Sr., increasingly withdrawn from public life after the turn of the century, transferred much of the responsibility for managing both wealth and reputation to his son. John D. Rockefeller Jr. Jr.'s role differed fundamentally from that of his father. Where Sr. had focused on building and consolidating industrial systems, Jr. confronted the task of stabilizing and legitimizing their social consequences. His responsibilities were less about expanding markets and more about managing relationships with workers, governments, institutions, and the public. The mansion became a spatial embodiment of this shift, adapting from a site of industrial authority to one of institutional stewardship. The architecture of Kaikwet and its surrounding estate facilitated this new role. Its secluded yet accessible location allowed for private deliberation without isolation from political centers. Its formal rooms supported structured meetings and ceremonial gatherings. Its gardens and outdoor spaces offered environments for informal conversation and reflection. The estate thus functioned as both sanctuary and forum, enabling a style of leadership that blended privacy with public responsibility. One of the most significant expressions of this evolving role was the expansion of the Rockefeller family's philanthropic infrastructure. The Rockefeller Foundation, formally established in 1913, became a central vehicle for the family's influence in education, public health, agriculture, and social science. Its work extended across national borders, funding research, building institutions, and shaping policy in regions ranging from rural America to colonial Africa and East Asia. Decisions guiding these initiatives were often discussed, debated, and refined within the spaces of the Pocantico estate. The mansion thus became a node in a global network of governance, connecting private wealth to public outcomes on an international scale. The foundation's early work focused heavily on public health, particularly the eradication of hookworm disease in the American South and the promotion of medical education through institutions such as Johns Hopkins University. These efforts reflected a broader progressive belief in scientific expertise and institutional intervention as tools for social improvement. The mansion's role in this context was not merely administrative. It provided a physical environment that reinforced the authority of expertise, the legitimacy of intervention, and the moral framing of wealth as service. The architecture, with its classical proportions and restrained elegance, symbolized rationality, order, and continuity, qualities associated with institutional authority. This association between architecture and institutional power extended to the Rockefeller family's involvement in higher education. The University of Chicago, founded with Rockefeller support, became one of the nation's leading research universities, shaping disciplines ranging from economics and sociology to physics and biology. The governance of such institutions required ongoing coordination, fundraising, and strategic planning, much of which was facilitated through meetings and correspondence centered at the estate. The mansion thus functioned as a quiet center of intellectual governance, shaping the production of knowledge as well as its dissemination. Yet the estate's influence extended beyond academia and public health into the realm of culture. The Rockefellers became prominent patrons of the arts, supporting museums, orchestras, and architectural projects that reshaped the cultural landscape of American cities. Perhaps the most visible manifestation of this patronage was Rockefeller Center in New York City, a vast urban complex constructed during the Great Depression that combined commercial, cultural, and public spaces in a unified architectural vision. Although Rockefeller Center itself lay far from Pocantico Hills, its conceptual origins and financial backing were deeply connected to the family's institutional infrastructure, of which the mansion remained a central component. Rockefeller Center represented a new model of architectural patronage, one that integrated private investment with public space, commercial enterprise with cultural expression. It housed offices, theaters, galleries, and broadcasting studios, becoming a focal point of urban life and mass communication. This project reflected the Rockefeller family's evolving relationship with power, shifting from industrial dominance toward urban development, cultural leadership, and institutional innovation. The mansion at Pocantico Hills, as the family's private anchor, provided continuity amid these public transformations, anchoring new ventures in a stable spatial and symbolic framework. The family's cultural patronage also extended into museum development, most notably through the Museum of Modern Art in New York, founded in 1929 with significant Rockefeller involvement. The establishment of MoMA signaled a willingness to engage not only with traditional forms of cultural authority, but with emerging artistic movements that challenged conventional aesthetics and social norms. This engagement reflected a broader shift in elite identity, from guardians of inherited tradition to curators of modernity. The mansion, with its blend of classical architecture and evolving art collections, mirrored this dual orientation, balancing continuity with adaptation. The spatial authority of the estate thus encompassed multiple dimensions: economic, institutional, cultural, and symbolic. It functioned as a site where industrial wealth was not only preserved, but reinterpreted, redistributed, and re-legitimized across new domains. This process did not eliminate the contradictions inherent in the origins of that wealth, but it reframed them within narratives of service, stewardship, and progress. These narratives, however, were not universally accepted. Critics continued to question the influence of private wealth on public institutions, arguing that philanthropy could distort priorities, undermine democratic accountability, and reinforce existing inequalities. The concentration of decision-making power within elite foundations raised concerns about transparency, representation, and the role of private actors in shaping public policy. The mansion, as a site of elite coordination, thus remained a focal point of both admiration and critique, symbolizing the capacity of wealth to shape society while also embodying the tensions of that influence. And the mid-20th century brought new challenges and transformations that further reshaped the meaning of the estate. The Great Depression, World War II, and the onset of the Cold War altered the global political and economic landscape. Industrial production was mobilized for war. Governments expanded their regulatory and social welfare functions. International institutions emerged to manage post-war reconstruction, economic stability, and geopolitical conflict. These developments reshaped the context in which private wealth operated, expanding the role of the state and redefining the boundaries between public and private authority. The Rockefeller family was deeply involved in this post-war institutional landscape. Through their foundations and personal networks, they supported initiatives in international development, public health, and diplomacy. They contributed to the formation and governance of organizations such as the United Nations, the World Health Organization, and the International Monetary Fund, either directly or indirectly through funding and institutional support. The donation of land for the United Nations headquarters in New York, facilitated by John D. Rockefeller Jr., stands as one of the most tangible expressions of this engagement, embedding private wealth into the physical infrastructure of global governance. The mansion at Pocantico Hills remained a central site for these activities, providing a setting for meetings, conferences, and informal diplomacy. Its architecture, gardens, and art collections offered a context in which global leaders, diplomats, and intellectuals could interact in an environment shaped by continuity, restraint, and symbolic authority. The estate thus became part of a global geography of power, linking domestic industrial history to international institutional governance. This global role further complicated the relationship between the mansion's private origins and its public functions. What had begun as a residence built from industrial profits now served as a platform for transnational influence. The spatial authority of the estate extended beyond national borders, shaping not only domestic institutions, but global systems of governance, knowledge, and culture. Architecture, in this sense, became a medium through which private wealth participated in the construction of global order. Yet even as the estate's functions expanded, its physical form remained grounded in its original architectural language. The classical proportions, formal gardens, and restrained ornamentation continued to convey stability and continuity. This continuity provided a symbolic anchor amid rapid social and political change, reinforcing the legitimacy of institutions associated with the estate. It also reinforced the perception of the Rockefeller family as custodians of enduring values, even as those values were continually renegotiated. This perception, however, did not eliminate the underlying tensions between wealth and democracy. The concentration of resources within elite families and institutions continued to raise questions about inequality, access, and representation. The post-war expansion of higher education, public health, and social welfare did not fully resolve these tensions. Instead, it reshaped them, creating new forms of dependency, influence, and power. The mansion, as a site of elite coordination, remained embedded within these dynamics, symbolizing both the potential and the limits of philanthropic governance. The estate's relationship to labor also evolved during this period. The expansion of social welfare programs, labor protections, and regulatory frameworks altered the conditions under which workers engaged with employers and institutions. Industrial relations became more formalized, with collective bargaining agreements, grievance procedures, and legal protections shaping workplace dynamics. The Rockefeller family's earlier labor conflicts, such as Ludlow, remained part of public memory, but they were increasingly reframed within narratives of reform and progress. The mansion's role in this reframing was subtle but significant, serving as a site where institutional narratives of responsibility and stewardship were cultivated and disseminated. Yet the memory of industrial conflict did not disappear. It continued to inform critiques of corporate power, philanthropic influence, and elite authority. The mansion, as a physical embodiment of industrial wealth, remained a symbol of these debates, even as its functions evolved. Its architecture thus carried not only the legacy of industrial consolidation, but also the imprint of reform, adaptation, and institutionalization. This layered historical significance invites a deeper examination of the relationship between architecture and memory. Buildings do not merely reflect the moment of their construction, they accumulate meanings over time, shaped by the events, institutions, and narratives that unfold within and around them. The Rockefeller Mansion exemplifies this process, serving as a palimpsest of industrial ambition, social conflict, philanthropic reform, and institutional governance. Each layer does not replace the previous one, but coexists with it, creating a complex and often contradictory historical record. The estate's gardens, art collections, and architectural spaces thus function as repositories of memory, encoding narratives of power, responsibility, and legitimacy. They invite interpretation and reinterpretation, shaping how visitors understand the history of industrial capitalism and its social consequences. The mansion's endurance ensures that these narratives remain present, not as abstract concepts, but as embodied experiences accessible through physical space. As the 20th century progressed into the post-war era, the Rockefeller family's influence continued to evolve. New generations assumed leadership roles, bringing new priorities, perspectives, and challenges. The estate adapted accordingly, incorporating new technologies, facilities, and programs while preserving its architectural core. This balance between continuity and change reflects the broader dynamics of elite institutions, which must maintain legitimacy by honoring tradition while responding to contemporary demands. The mansion's role in this process is both symbolic and practical. Symbolically, it anchors the family's identity, providing a physical reference point for continuity. Practically, it facilitates coordination, communication, and collaboration across generations and institutions. The estate thus functions as both memory and mechanism, preserving the past while enabling future action. This dual function underscores the broader significance of architecture in shaping social power. Buildings do not merely house activities, they structure relationships, encode values, and mediate authority. The Rockefeller Mansion exemplifies this role, demonstrating how architecture can transform economic capital into cultural, institutional, and symbolic power. It also reveals the limits of this transformation, as architecture cannot fully resolve the tensions inherent in the sources of that power. These tensions continue to resonate in contemporary debates about wealth, inequality, and governance. As new forms of economic concentration emerge in the digital age, questions about the legitimacy, accountability, and social responsibility of private wealth remain urgent. The Rockefeller Mansion, as a historical case study, offers insights into how earlier generations confronted these questions, how they sought to reconcile private power with public responsibility, and how architecture functioned as both symbol and instrument in this process. In tracing this history, we do not seek to offer definitive judgments, but to illuminate the complex interplay between wealth, power, and space. The mansion stands as a testament to this interplay, embodying both the achievements and the contradictions of American industrial capitalism. It invites us to consider how power is constructed, legitimized, and sustained, not only through economic systems and political institutions, but through the built environment itself. As we continue this narrative, we will examine the later stages of the estate's history, including its transition into a public cultural site, its role in historical preservation, and its place in contemporary understandings of the Gilded Age and Progressive Era. We will explore how the mansion's meanings have been reinterpreted in light of new historical scholarship, social movements, and cultural values. Through this examination, we will consider not only what the mansion was, but what it has become and what it continues to signify in a society still grappling with the legacies of industrial power. By the late 20th century, the Rockefeller mansion at Pocantico Hills had entered a new phase of its existence, one no longer defined solely by private authority or institutional governance, but by public interpretation, historical preservation, and cultural memory. This transition did not erase the estate's origins in industrial wealth or its long role as a center of elite influence. Instead, it reframed those origins within a broader narrative about American capitalism, power, and responsibility, inviting public engagement with a space once reserved for private deliberation. This transformation was shaped by changes within the Rockefeller family itself. As subsequent generations inherited not only wealth, but also the institutional responsibilities associated with it, the relationship between private residence and public legacy evolved. The estate remained a family home, but it increasingly functioned as a site of historical interpretation and cultural education. Portions of the property were open to visitors. Collections were curated with public audiences in mind. Educational programs were developed to contextualize the estate's architecture, art, and history within the broader story of American industrialization and reform. The decision to open aspects of the estate to the public reflected a broader shift in elite identity. By the late 20th century, the legitimacy of private wealth was increasingly tied to transparency, accountability, and public service. Cultural institutions, historic preservation, and educational outreach became important vehicles through which elite families sought to demonstrate social responsibility and civic engagement. The Rockefeller Mansion's partial transformation into a public site thus aligned with these evolving norms, repositioning the estate as a shared cultural resource rather than an exclusively private domain. This repositioning required careful negotiation between preservation and interpretation. The physical fabric of the mansion, its architecture, interiors, gardens, and art collections, had to be maintained in ways that preserved historical authenticity while accommodating public access. Preservationists, curators, and historians worked together to balance these objectives, ensuring that the estate remained structurally sound and historically accurate, while also accessible and intelligible to contemporary audiences. This process transformed the mansion into a living museum, where architecture and landscape served as primary historical sources. The interpretive narratives developed for the estate sought to situate it within the broader context of American industrial history. Rather than presenting the mansion solely as a testament to personal success or aesthetic achievement, these narratives emphasized its relationship to the economic, social, and political forces that shaped the nation. Visitors were invited to consider how industrial wealth was accumulated, how it was contested, and how it was ultimately institutionalized through philanthropy and governance. The estate thus became a site of historical reflection, encouraging critical engagement with the legacies of industrial capitalism. This critical engagement extended to the mansion's art collections. Curators contextualized the works not only as objects of aesthetic value, but as expressions of cultural authority and social identity. The presence of European masterpieces, for example, was interpreted as part of a broader effort by American elites to align themselves with established cultural traditions and to assert legitimacy through patronage. Modern and contemporary works were similarly framed within narratives of innovation, progress, and cultural transformation. Through these interpretive strategies, the estate's collections were integrated into a larger story about the relationship between wealth, culture, and power. The gardens and landscape architecture of the estate also became central to its public interpretation. Designed to reflect order, harmony, and control, these landscapes were presented as symbolic expressions of the industrial worldview, translating economic rationality into spatial form. At the same time, they were interpreted through contemporary lenses of environmental history, labor history, and social ecology, highlighting the human and ecological systems that sustain them. This multi-layered approach allowed visitors to engage with the estate not only as an aesthetic environment, but as a complex historical artifact shaped by intersecting forces. The estate's transition into a public cultural site did not occur in isolation. It coincided with broader developments in historic preservation and public history in the United States. The late 20th century witnessed a growing recognition of the importance of preserving industrial heritage, not only factories and infrastructure, but also the residences and institutions associated with industrial elites. This recognition reflected an expanding understanding of history, one that encompassed not only political events and military conflicts, but also economic systems, social structures, and cultural practices. The Rockefeller Mansion, as a prominent example of elite industrial architecture, became part of this expanded historical landscape. This inclusion raised important questions about representation and interpretation. How should the histories of industrial elites be presented? How should their achievements and controversies be balanced? How should the experiences of workers, communities, and marginalized groups be integrated into narratives centered on wealth and power? These questions shaped the interpretive strategies employed at the estate, influencing everything from tour narratives to exhibition design and educational programming. The answers were not simple. They required ongoing dialogue among historians, curators, educators, and community stakeholders. They also required a willingness to confront uncomfortable aspects of the estate's history, including its connections to labor conflict, economic inequality, and environmental impact. The mansion's public interpretation thus became an evolving process, reflecting changes in historical scholarship, cultural values, and social priorities. This process of reinterpretation highlights the dynamic nature of historical meaning. Buildings do not possess fixed significance. Their meanings are shaped by the narratives we construct around them, the questions we ask, and the context in which we engage with them. The Rockefeller Mansion's transformation from private residence to public cultural site illustrates how historical meaning can be renegotiated over time, reflecting shifts in social consciousness and interpretive frameworks. At the same time, the physical presence of the estate imposes certain constraints on interpretation. Its architecture, materials, and spatial organization reflect the values and priorities of its original builders, and these features cannot be easily altered without compromising historical authenticity. The mansion thus serves as a material anchor for historical interpretation, grounding narratives in tangible evidence and resisting purely abstract or ideological reinterpretation. This tension between material continuity and interpretive change is a defining feature of historic preservation, shaping how the past is presented and understood. The estate's public role also intersects with broader debates about the stewardship of private wealth and cultural heritage. Who owns history? Who has the authority to interpret it? How should resources derived from private fortunes be managed in the public interest? The Rockefeller Mansion, as a privately owned property with significant public functions, occupies a complex position within these debates. Its management reflects ongoing negotiations between private interests, public responsibilities, and institutional obligations. These negotiations extend beyond the boundaries of the estate itself. They resonate with broader discussions about the role of philanthropy in public life, the influence of private foundations on public policy, and the relationship between wealth and democracy. The Rockefeller family's long history of philanthropic engagement, institutional leadership, and public influence positions the mansion as a symbolic site within these discussions, embodying both the potential and the challenges of private wealth in a democratic society. The estate's role in education further illustrates this complexity. Through tours, lectures, publications, and partnerships with academic institutions, the mansion serves as a platform for historical learning and critical inquiry. These educational initiatives aim not only to convey factual information, but to foster reflection on broader themes, including industrialization, inequality, reform, and institutional power. In this capacity, the estate contributes to public understanding of American history, shaping how future generations interpret the legacies of industrial capitalism. This educational role also underscores the importance of historical context. The mansion cannot be understood in isolation from the economic, social, and political systems that produced it. Its architecture, art, and landscapes are inseparable from the industrial processes, labor relations, and institutional developments that shape the modern United States. By situating the estate within this broader context, Public interpretation seeks to move beyond celebration or condemnation toward a more nuanced understanding of historical complexity. This nuance is particularly important in contemporary discussions about wealth and inequality. As economic disparities have widened in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, public interest in the histories of industrial elites has intensified. The Rockefeller Mansion, as a visible symbol of historical wealth concentration, attracts attention not only for its aesthetic qualities, but for what it represents about the distribution of resources and power. Its public interpretation thus engages with contemporary concerns, connecting past and present in meaningful ways. These connections invite reflection on the enduring relevance of the mansion's history. Although the industrial systems that produced Rockefeller wealth have evolved, the fundamental questions they raised about power, responsibility, and legitimacy remain. How should wealth be accumulated? How should it be regulated? How should it be distributed? How should its social consequences be addressed? The Rockefeller Mansion does not provide definitive answers to these questions, but it offers a historical case study through which they can be explored. In exploring this case study, it is essential to recognize the limits of architectural symbolism. Buildings can express values, embody narratives, and facilitate social processes, but they cannot resolve structural inequalities or moral contradictions. The Rockefeller Mansion can illustrate how wealth has been legitimized, institutionalized, and reinterpreted, but it cannot erase the conflicts and injustices associated with its origins. Recognizing this limitation is crucial to a balanced historical understanding. At the same time, the mansion's endurance demonstrates the power of architecture to shape memory, identity, and discourse. Its continued presence in the landscape ensures that the history of industrial wealth remains visible and tangible, rather than abstract or forgotten. By opening the estate to public engagement, its stewards have transformed it into a space of dialogue, where past and present intersect and where complex histories can be examined with nuance and care. This transformation does not diminish the mansion's original symbolic function. Rather, it adds new layers of meaning. The estate remains a testament to industrial power, but it also becomes a site of reflection, education, and critique. It embodies both the achievements and the contradictions of American capitalism, offering a space where these dimensions can be explored in relation to one another. As we approach the conclusion of this narrative, it is important to return to the mansion's foundational role as a spatial expression of wealth and power. From its commanding hilltop position to its formal gardens and classical architecture, the estate was designed to project permanence, order, and authority. These qualities were not merely aesthetic, they were political, moral, and social. They communicated a vision of wealth as stable, legitimate, and responsible, even as that wealth was produced through systems of competition, consolidation, and conflict. Over time, this vision was revised, challenged, and expanded. The estate became a site of reform, philanthropy, and institutional governance, reflecting broader changes in elite identity and social responsibility. It also became a site of public interpretation, historical preservation, and cultural education, inviting broader engagement with its history and meaning. Through these transformations, the mansion's symbolic function evolved, but its central role as a mediator between wealth and society remained. In tracing this evolution, we have followed the estate from its origins in industrial consolidation to its contemporary role as a public cultural site. We have examined how architecture, landscape, art, and institutional function intersected to shape its meaning across generations. We have explored how the mansion embodied the tensions between private power and public responsibility, between accumulation and legitimacy, between stability and change. These tensions are not unique to the Rockefeller family or to the Gilded Age. They are inherent in the structure of modern capitalism itself. The Rockefeller Mansion thus offers a lens through which to examine broader historical processes, illuminating how economic systems are translated into cultural forms, how power is embedded in space, and how legitimacy is constructed and contested. It reminds us that history is not only written in documents and institutions, but also in buildings, landscapes, and everyday environments. These physical forms shape how we experience the past, how we interpret the present, and how we imagine the future. As we reflect on the mansion's legacy, we are invited to consider not only what it reveals about American industrial power, but what it suggests about the responsibilities of wealth in any era. The questions raised by its history about governance, inequality, reform, and legitimacy remain relevant, challenging us to think critically about the relationship between private resources and public life. In this sense, the mansion is not merely a historical artifact, but a continuing participant in the ongoing dialogue about power in society. Through its stone walls, formal gardens, and layered narratives, the Rockefeller Mansion stands as both a monument and a mirror. A monument to a particular moment in American history, and a mirror reflecting enduring questions about wealth, power, and responsibility. Its story is not confined to the past. It continues to unfold, shaped by contemporary interpretations, social values, and historical inquiry. In engaging with this story, we engage not only with the legacy of one family, but with the broader dynamics that have shaped modern society. While the Rockefeller estate's transition into a public cultural site reframed its meaning for later generations, the deeper significance of the mansion lies in how it reveals the evolving relationship between private power and public governance in the United States. The estate was not merely a reflection of wealth, but a functional space where decisions shaping national and global institutions were formulated, negotiated, and implemented. Its rooms witnessed not only family life, but also the quiet labor of governance, policy formation, and philanthropic strategy. This role situates the mansion within a broader transformation of American elites during the 20th century. As industrial capitalism matured, wealth increasingly moved from direct entrepreneurial control toward institutional management. The Rockefeller family exemplified this shift. Rather than exercising power solely through ownership and direct business leadership, later generations operated through boards, foundations, and advisory bodies. The mansion, as both a residence and a conference site, embodied this transition, becoming a spatial bridge between private wealth and institutional authority. Within its walls, philanthropic strategies were developed that would influence public health, education, science, and international relations. The Rockefeller Foundation, the General Education Board, and other affiliated organizations did not merely dispense charity, they helped shape the structure of modern social policy. Programs in medical research, agricultural development, and educational reform were often conceptualized and refined through deliberations that occurred in elite domestic settings like Bocanico. The mansion thus functioned as an informal but powerful node within the architecture of governance. This fusion of domestic space and institutional power reflects a distinctive feature of American elite culture. Unlike European aristocratic systems, where power was traditionally exercised through hereditary political offices and formal court structures, American elites operated through private institutions, voluntary associations, and philanthropic organizations. Their authority was less visible, but no less influential. The Rockefeller Mansion exemplifies this model, illustrating how private residences could serve as de facto centers of policy formation and social coordination. The implications of this model extend beyond the Rockefeller family. Throughout the 20th century, many American philanthropic estates and elite residences became sites of strategic planning, intellectual exchange, and institutional collaboration. These spaces facilitated the circulation of ideas, the formation of networks, and the alignment of private resources with public goals. In this sense, the Rockefeller Mansion represents not an anomaly, but a broader pattern within American political and social life. This pattern, however, has generated enduring debates about legitimacy and accountability. When public policy is shaped in private spaces, questions arise about transparency, democratic participation, and the concentration of influence. Critics have argued that philanthropic elites wield disproportionate power over social priorities, often without sufficient public oversight. Supporters counter that private philanthropy has enabled innovation, experimentation, and long-term investment in areas neglected by government. The Rockefeller Mansion, as a symbolic and functional site of philanthropic governance, stands at the center of this debate. These tensions were particularly evident during periods of social and political upheaval. During the Progressive Era, the New Deal, and the post-war period, The expansion of federal authority reshaped the relationship between private wealth and public governance. Philanthropic institutions adapted by redefining their roles, often shifting from direct service provision to research, advocacy, and capacity building. The mansion, as a space of strategic deliberation, reflected these shifts, accommodating new forms of institutional coordination and policy engagement. The estate's role in international affairs further underscores its significance. As American influence expanded globally in the 20th century, philanthropic organizations associated with the Rockefeller family played key roles in international health, agriculture, and development. Programs addressing malaria, yellow fever, and agricultural productivity were conceptualized within elite networks that included family members, scientists, diplomats, and policy experts. While the mansion itself was not the sole site of these deliberations, it symbolized the domestic foundations of global influence, linking private American wealth to international governance. This global dimension raises important questions about power, asymmetry, cultural influence, and historical responsibility. Philanthropic interventions, even when motivated by humanitarian goals, often reflected Western assumptions about development, progress, and governance. The Rockefeller institutions were no exception. Their programs reshaped societies and institutions worldwide, sometimes with transformative benefits, sometimes with unintended consequences. The mansion, as a symbolic center of this philanthropic empire, thus becomes a site for critical reflection on the ethics and impact of private influence in global affairs. Within the United States, the estate's legacy also intersects with broader narratives of social reform and inequality. Rockefeller philanthropy supported initiatives in education, public health, urban planning, and the social sciences. These efforts contributed to significant improvements in living standards, institutional capacity, and scientific knowledge. Yet they also coexisted with persistent economic inequality, labor conflict, and social stratification. The mansion, as a physical embodiment of concentrated wealth, stands in tension with the reformist ideals associated with philanthropic intervention. This tension invites reflection on the limits of philanthropy as a mechanism for social change. While private giving can address specific problems, it cannot substitute for structural reforms or democratic governance. The Rockefeller estate's history illustrates both the potential and the constraints of elite-led reform. It shows how private resources can catalyze innovation and institutional development, while also revealing the challenges of aligning private initiatives with broader public accountability and systemic transformation. The architectural and spatial organization of the mansion reinforces these themes. Its formal rooms, expansive grounds, and hierarchical layout reflect a social order structured around authority, expertise, and stewardship. These spatial forms parallel the organizational structures of philanthropic institutions, which similarly rely on hierarchical governance, expert knowledge, and strategic oversight. The mansion thus serves not only as a symbol of wealth, but as a spatial analog of institutional power. At the same time, the estate's evolving public role complicates this symbolism. By opening portions of the property to visitors, hosting educational programs, and engaging with historical scholarship, the mansion has been recontextualized as a site of public learning rather than exclusive authority. This transformation reflects broader cultural shifts toward transparency, inclusion, and critical engagement with elite histories. It also underscores the capacity of historic sites to serve as platforms for dialogue about power, responsibility, and social change. This dialogue is particularly relevant in contemporary discussions about wealth concentration, corporate influence, and the role of private actors in public life. As economic inequality has intensified in recent decades, public scrutiny of elite institutions has increased. The Rockefeller Mansion, as a visible and enduring symbol of historical wealth, becomes a focal point for these discussions, prompting questions about how wealth is accumulated, managed, and deployed across generations. These questions extend beyond the Rockefeller family to encompass broader systemic dynamics. They invite us to consider how economic structures shape social institutions, how power is legitimized through culture and architecture, and how historical narratives influence contemporary values. The mansion's story thus transcends its specific historical context, offering insights into the enduring relationship between wealth and society. In examining this relationship, it is important to avoid simplistic judgments. The history of the Rockefeller estate is neither a story of unambiguous benevolence nor one of unmitigated exploitation. It is a complex narrative shaped by competing values, conflicting interests, and evolving social norms. The mansion embodies these complexities, serving as a physical archive of historical contradictions and aspirations. These contradictions are perhaps most evident in the interplay between accumulation and reform. The wealth that built the mansion was generated through industrial consolidation and market dominance, practices that provoked public concern and regulatory response. Yet that same wealth supported philanthropic initiatives that advanced public welfare, scientific knowledge, and institutional development. The mansion thus encapsulates a paradox at the heart of modern capitalism: the coexistence of economic concentration and social reform, of private power and public purpose. This paradox remains unresolved. Contemporary debates about corporate responsibility, philanthropy, and inequality continue to echo the questions raised by the Rockefeller estate's history. The mansion's continued relevance lies in its capacity to illuminate these enduring tensions, providing a historical lens through which to examine present challenges. As we approach the conclusion of this extended narrative, it becomes clear that the Rockefeller Mansion is more than a historical curiosity or architectural landmark. It is a site of memory, a symbol of power, and a platform for critical reflection. Its walls have witnessed not only family life and aesthetic expression, but also the formation of institutions, the negotiation of authority, and the pursuit of social reform. The mansion's legacy invites us to consider how spaces shape social relations and how architecture mediates between private and public realms. It reminds us that power is not only exercised through laws and institutions, but also through environments, networks, and cultural practices. By examining the mansion's history, we gain insight into the subtle and often invisible mechanisms through which wealth influences society. This insight is particularly valuable in an era when the boundaries between private and public power are increasingly blurred. Philanthropic foundations, corporate actors, and private institutions continue to play significant roles in shaping social priorities, public policy, and global governance. The Rockefeller Mansion offers a historical precedent for these dynamics, illustrating both their potential benefits and their inherent challenges. Ultimately, the mansion's significance lies not in its grandeur alone, but in its capacity to provoke reflection on the responsibilities of wealth. It challenges us to consider how resources should be managed, how power should be exercised, and how legitimacy should be constructed in a democratic society. These questions are as relevant today as they were in the era of industrial consolidation and philanthropic expansion. In this sense, the Rockefeller Mansion stands not only as a monument to past wealth, but as a continuing interlocutor in the ongoing conversation about power and society. Its history invites us to engage critically with the legacies of industrial capitalism, to acknowledge both its achievements and its costs, and to consider how its lessons might inform more equitable and accountable forms of social organization. Through its enduring presence, the mansion reminds us that history is not static, but dynamic, shaped by interpretation, engagement, and reflection. As long as questions of wealth, power, and responsibility remain central to public life, the story of the Rockefeller estate will continue to resonate, offering both cautionary insights and opportunities for learning. As the 20th century moved deeper into its second half, the Rockefeller Mansion's meaning continued to evolve, shaped by shifts in economic structures, cultural values, and public expectations. What had once stood as a private domain of industrial authority and elite discretion increasingly became a site of public interpretation, historical inquiry, and civic engagement. This transition did not erase the mansion's origins, but it reframed them, transforming a symbol of concentrated power into a platform for examining the social consequences of that power. This transformation unfolded gradually, influenced by broader changes in American society. The post-war period brought expanded access to education, the growth of mass media, and rising expectations for institutional transparency. Public trust in large corporations and philanthropic elites became more contested, shaped by debates over civil rights, economic inequality, environmental responsibility, and political accountability. Within this shifting context, elite estates like the Rockefeller Mansion could no longer remain insulated from public scrutiny. Their histories, meanings, and legacies became subjects of critical engagement rather than silent reverence. The opening of the estate to scholars, visitors, and cultural institutions marked a decisive moment in this reorientation. Through archival access, public programming, and interpretive initiatives, the mansion was recontextualized as a site of historical inquiry rather than private authority. Its rooms became classrooms, its grounds became landscapes of memory, and its collections became sources of evidence. This transition reflected a broader movement within historic preservation toward public access, interpretive transparency, and critical engagement with the past. Yet this transformation did not diminish the mansion's symbolic power. Instead, it complicated it, allowing the estate to function simultaneously as an artifact of wealth and a forum for examining the structures that produced it. Visitors encountered not only architectural beauty and material refinement, but also narratives of industrial consolidation, labor conflict, regulatory reform, and philanthropic intervention. The mansion thus became a site of dialogue between past and present, between accumulation and accountability, between private power and public responsibility. This dialogue is particularly evident in the interpretation of the mansion's architectural symbolism. The estate's scale, craftsmanship, and spatial hierarchy continue to convey authority and permanence, even as their meanings are reframed through historical analysis. Where once these features signaled unchallenged dominance, they now invite reflection on the social systems that enable such dominance and the human costs associated with it. The mansion's architecture thus becomes both an aesthetic experience and a historical argument, inviting viewers to consider how space encodes power. The interpretive challenge lies in balancing admiration for craftsmanship and cultural achievement with critical awareness of historical context. The Rockefeller Mansion, like many elite estates, embodies extraordinary human skill, artistic vision, and organizational capacity. Its construction required the labor of architects, artisans, engineers, gardeners, and domestic workers whose contributions often remain invisible in narratives focused on ownership and wealth. Recognizing these labor histories complicates the mansion's legacy, shifting attention from individual fortune to collective effort. This recognition aligns with broader historiographical shifts towards social history, labor history, and the study of everyday life. By situating the mansion within these frameworks, historians and curators have sought to recover the experiences of those who built, maintained, and inhabited the estate beyond its owners. These perspectives reveal the mansion not only as a symbol of elite power, but also as a workplace, a community, and a site of social interaction shaped by class, race, gender, and economic hierarchy. Such perspectives deepen our understanding of the mansion's role within the industrial order. The wealth that financed the estate was generated through systems that relied on large-scale labor forces, complex supply chains, and global markets. These systems produced both unprecedented prosperity and profound inequality. The mansion stands as a visible artifact of these dynamics, embodying the asymmetrical distribution of resources and opportunities that characterized industrial capitalism. At the same time, the estate's philanthropic legacy complicates this narrative. The institutions supported by Rockefeller wealth contributed to public health, education, scientific research, and cultural development on a global scale. These contributions had tangible and lasting effects, improving living conditions, expanding knowledge, and strengthening institutional capacity. The mansion, as a symbolic center of this philanthropic network, thus reflects not only accumulation, but also redistribution, not only private benefit, but also public investment. Yet this redistribution was shaped by elite priorities, institutional frameworks, and prevailing social assumptions. Philanthropic initiatives often reflected the values and perspectives of their founders, influencing which problems were addressed, which solutions were pursued, and which populations were prioritized. While many initiatives produced significant benefits, they also raise questions about power, agency, and representation. Who decides what constitutes a social problem? Who determines appropriate solutions? Whose voices are heard and whose are marginalized? The Rockefeller Mansion, as a site of philanthropic strategy, becomes a lens through which to examine these questions. It reminds us that philanthropy, like all forms of power, operates within social contexts shaped by inequality, ideology, and institutional structure. Understanding this complexity requires moving beyond simplistic narratives of generosity or exploitation and toward a more nuanced analysis of how private resources intersect with public needs. This analysis gains urgency in contemporary discussions about wealth concentration and social responsibility. In the 21st century, economic inequality has reached levels comparable to those of the Gilded Age, prompting renewed scrutiny of elite institutions, corporate governance, and philanthropic practice. The Rockefeller Mansion's history offers a valuable historical perspective on these debates, illustrating how similar dynamics unfolded in earlier periods and how society responded through regulation, reform, and cultural change. One of the most significant responses to Gilded Age inequality was the expansion of regulatory frameworks and democratic institutions. Antitrust legislation, labor protections, social welfare programs, and progressive taxation reshaped the relationship between private wealth and public authority. These reforms did not eliminate inequality, but they redefined its boundaries, establishing norms of accountability, transparency, and social responsibility. The Rockefeller estate's history intersects with these reforms, reflecting both the pressures that produced them and the adaptations that followed. The mansion thus becomes a site for exploring the evolution of American capitalism itself. It stands at the intersection of entrepreneurial innovation, industrial consolidation, regulatory intervention, and philanthropic reform. Its walls contain not only the echoes of private life, but also the traces of systemic transformation, capturing moments of conflict, negotiation, and adaptation that shape the modern economic order. This systemic perspective invites us to consider the mansion not as an isolated phenomenon, but as part of a broader network of institutions, practices, and ideologies. It is linked to corporate boardrooms, government agencies, scientific laboratories, universities, and international organizations. Its significance extends beyond its physical boundaries, connecting it to the infrastructures of power that define modern society. Understanding these connections requires an interdisciplinary approach, drawing on history, sociology, political economy, architecture, and cultural studies. The mansion's architecture can be read alongside corporate charters, philanthropic charters, legal decisions, and policy debates, revealing the interplay between material form and institutional structure. This approach illuminates how power is embedded not only in laws and organizations, but also in spaces, symbols, and cultural practices. Such analysis also highlights the importance of memory and interpretation in shaping historical understanding. The meanings attributed to the Rockefeller Mansion have changed over time, reflecting shifts in cultural values, scholarly perspectives, and public concerns. What was once celebrated as a triumph of individual achievement and national progress is now examined through the lenses of inequality, labor, environmental impact, and global influence. These evolving interpretations do not negate the mansion's historical significance. They enrich it, adding layers of meaning and complexity. This layered understanding underscores the importance of historical humility. No single narrative can fully capture the mansion's significance, nor can any single perspective exhaust its meanings. The estate's history invites ongoing inquiry, debate, and reinterpretation, reflecting the dynamic nature of historical understanding itself. It reminds us that history is not a fixed record, but a living conversation shaped by new evidence, new questions, and new contexts. As we approach the closing reflections of this documentary, the Rockefeller Mansion emerges not simply as a relic of the past, but as an active participant in contemporary discourse. It stands as a testament to the power of architecture to shape memory, to the influence of wealth on institutional development, and to the enduring tension between private authority and public responsibility. Its story resonates because it speaks to fundamental questions about how societies organize resources, distribute power, and define justice. These questions remain unresolved, as they were in the era of industrial consolidation and philanthropic expansion. They continue to shape debates about corporate governance, social welfare, environmental sustainability, and democratic accountability. The Rockefeller Mansion, through its history and ongoing interpretation, offers a lens through which to examine these debates, providing historical depth and contextual insight. Ultimately, the mansion's significance lies not in its size, its materials, or its aesthetic achievements alone, but in its capacity to illuminate the structures of power that define modern life. It invites us to reflect on the origins of wealth, the uses of influence, and the responsibilities that accompany privilege. It challenges us to consider how history can inform more equitable and accountable forms of social organization, without erasing the complexities and contradictions of the past. In this sense, the mansion serves as both a monument and a mirror, a monument to the achievements and excesses of industrial capitalism, and a mirror reflecting the ongoing challenges of power, inequality, and responsibility in contemporary society. Its story does not offer simple answers, but it provides a framework for critical reflection, encouraging us to engage thoughtfully with the legacies of wealth and the possibilities of reform. Through this extended narrative, the Rockefeller Mansion has emerged as a central character in the story of American industrial power, philanthropy, and institutional development. Its history embodies the intertwined trajectories of accumulation and reform, authority and accountability, private interest and public purpose. By tracing these trajectories, we gain a deeper understanding of the forces that have shaped modern society and the enduring questions that continue to define it. The story of the Rockefeller Mansion cannot be separated from the larger moral and political reckoning that unfolded across American society as the consequences of industrial capitalism became impossible to ignore. By the early 20th century, the scale of economic concentration, the volatility of financial markets, and the social costs of rapid industrialization had begun to reshape public consciousness. Reform movements emerged not merely as reactions to isolated abuses, but as efforts to redefine the relationship between private wealth and public welfare. Within this broader transformation, the mansion stands as both a product of industrial power and a site through which that power sought legitimacy, stability, and moral grounding. The legitimacy of wealth had long been a contested issue in American culture. The nation's founding ideals emphasized equality, opportunity, and republican virtue, values that sat uneasily alongside the emergence of vast private fortunes. The Gilded Age intensified this tension, producing a society in which unprecedented economic growth coexisted with widespread poverty, labor unrest, and political corruption. The Rockefeller fortune, like those of Carnegie, Morgan, Vanderbilt, and others, became emblematic of this contradiction, symbolizing both industrial achievement and social imbalance. Public responses to this contradiction took many forms. Journalists exposed corporate practices, reformers advocated regulatory intervention, labor movements organized for improved conditions, and intellectuals debated the moral foundations of capitalism. Philanthropy emerged as one mechanism through which elite families sought to reconcile wealth with social responsibility. The Rockefeller Mansion, as a center of philanthropic strategy, thus became part of a broader effort to redefine the moral meaning of wealth in a democratic society. This effort was shaped by both conviction and necessity. The intensifying scrutiny of corporate power, the passage of antitrust legislation, and the expansion of regulatory authority signaled a shifting balance between private enterprise and public oversight. Philanthropic initiatives offered a way for elite families to demonstrate civic commitment, contribute to social reform, and participate in the construction of public institutions. Yet these initiatives also served to stabilize existing power structures, channeling reform through elite-controlled institutions rather than grassroots movements or radical restructuring. The mansion's role in this process was both symbolic and practical. It provided a setting in which philanthropic leaders could articulate visions of social progress, develop institutional frameworks, and coordinate with academic, governmental, and international partners. These activities reflected a belief in expertise, planning, and institutional capacity as the foundations of social improvement. They also reflected a paternalistic orientation toward reform, grounded in the assumption that social problems could be addressed through rational management and scientific intervention. This orientation aligned with broader currents in progressive-era thought, which emphasized efficiency, expertise, and administrative reform. The rise of professionalized social work, public health, education, and urban planning reflected a growing confidence in the capacity of trained specialists to diagnose and address social problems. Philanthropic institutions associated with the Rockefeller family played significant roles in supporting these fields, funding research, training professionals, and establishing new organizational models. The mansion, as a site of strategic deliberation, thus became a node within the expanding infrastructure of professional governance. At the same time, this professionalization reshaped the relationship between citizens and institutions. As social services became increasingly administered by experts and organizations, the role of individual agency and community participation shifted. While professionalized systems improved efficiency and scale, they also risked distancing decision-making from the populations they served. The mansion's history as a site of elite-led reform thus reflects both the strengths and limitations of technocratic governance. These dynamics were particularly evident in the realm of public health. Rockefeller-funded initiatives played pivotal roles in advancing medical research, disease control, and public health infrastructure. Programs targeting hookworm, yellow fever, malaria, and other diseases produced measurable improvements in health outcomes, both in the United States and abroad. These efforts contributed to the development of modern public health systems, epidemiological research, and global health governance. The mansion, as a locus of philanthropic coordination, symbolized this expansion of private influence into public health policy. Yet these initiatives also raised ethical questions about consent, cultural sensitivity, and power asymmetry. Public health campaigns often operated within colonial or semi-colonial contexts, where local populations had limited influence over program design or implementation. Even within the United States, interventions sometimes reflected social biases related to class, race, and gender. The mansion's role in shaping these initiatives invites critical reflection on the ethical dimensions of philanthropic power, highlighting the importance of accountability, participation, and cultural respect in the social reform. The ethical complexity of philanthropy extends beyond public health to encompass education, agriculture, urban planning, and international development. Rockefeller-funded programs influence the structure of universities, the organization of agricultural research, the design of urban infrastructure, and the priorities of international institutions. These interventions often produce significant benefits, advancing knowledge, productivity, and institutional capacity. Yet they also shape social priorities in ways that reflected elite perspectives, sometimes marginalizing alternative approaches or local knowledge. The mansion's history thus embodies a fundamental tension between expertise and democracy, between institutional capacity and popular participation. It illustrates how private wealth can both enable and constrain social change, facilitating innovation while shaping its direction and scope. This tension remains central to contemporary debates about philanthropy, corporate social responsibility, and the role of private actors in public life. As the 20th century progressed, these debates intensified, influenced by new social movements, political transformations, and global challenges. The civil rights movement, feminist movement, environmental movement, and anti-war movement all challenged established institutions and power structures, including philanthropic organizations. These movements emphasized participation, equity, and justice, questioning technocratic models of reform and demanding greater accountability from elite institutions. Within this context, the Rockefeller Mansion's symbolic significance evolved. It came to represent not only the achievements of industrial capitalism and philanthropic reform, but also the limitations of elite-driven social change. Its history became a lens through which to examine the intersections of power, privilege, and social justice, highlighting the need for more inclusive and participatory approaches to governance. This evolving interpretation reflects broader shifts in historical scholarship and public memory. Historians increasingly emphasize the experiences of marginalized groups, the structural dimensions of inequality, and the global context of American power. Museums and historic sites adopted more critical and inclusive interpretive frameworks, seeking to present complex narratives that acknowledge both achievement and harm. The Rockefeller Mansion, as a prominent historical site, became part of this movement, incorporating perspectives on labor, race, gender, and environmental impact into its interpretive programs. These efforts did not diminish the mansion's historical significance. Rather, they expanded it, situating the estate within a more comprehensive and nuanced narrative. The mansion's architecture, collections, and landscapes became entry points into discussions about industrialization, urbanization, globalization, and social reform. Its story became not only a family history, but a social history, reflecting the broader forces that shaped modern society. This broader narrative invites us to consider the mansion not as a static monument, but as a dynamic historical text, open to reinterpretation and dialogue. Its meanings are not fixed, but evolve as new questions emerge, new evidence is uncovered, and new perspectives are brought to bear. This openness is essential to the mansion's continued relevance, allowing it to serve as a site of learning, reflection, and critical engagement. In this sense, the mansion's legacy is not confined to the past. It continues to shape contemporary conversations about wealth, power, and responsibility, offering historical context for debates that remain unresolved. Its story challenges us to grapple with the complexities of modern capitalism, the possibilities and limitations of philanthropy, and the ethical dimensions of private influence in public life. As we reflect on this legacy, it becomes clear that the Rockefeller Mansion is not simply a symbol of wealth, but a site of moral inquiry. It invites us to ask not only how wealth is accumulated, but how it is justified, deployed, and evaluated. It challenges us to consider the relationship between private success and public good, between individual achievement and collective responsibility. These questions are not abstract. They have concrete implications for policy, governance, and social practice. They shape decisions about taxation, regulation, social investment, and institutional design. They influence how societies define fairness, opportunity, and justice. The mansion's history offers a historical lens through which to examine these issues, providing both cautionary insights and examples of reform. In examining this history, it is important to recognize the agency of multiple actors. The Rockefeller family did not act in isolation. Their decisions were shaped by social pressures, legal frameworks, cultural values, and institutional constraints. Likewise, reform movements, regulatory agencies, and social institutions were shaped by the actions of individuals, communities, and organizations across society. The mansion's story thus reflects not a single narrative of power, but a complex web of interactions, conflicts, and collaborations. This complexity resists simplistic moral judgments. It requires a nuanced understanding that acknowledges both achievement and harm, both intention and consequence. It invites empathy without absolution, critique without dismissal. Such an approach is essential for engaging meaningfully with historical legacies and for drawing lessons that can inform contemporary practice. As this documentary draws closer to its conclusion, the Rockefeller Mansion emerges as a multifaceted symbol of industrial power, philanthropic ambition, social reform, and enduring inequality. Its history reflects the contradictions of modern capitalism, the possibilities of institutional innovation, and the challenges of aligning private wealth with public good. It stands as a testament to the enduring influence of architecture, culture, and memory in shaping our understanding of power and responsibility. The mansion's story does not resolve the tensions it embodies. Instead, it illuminates them, providing a space for reflection, dialogue, and critical inquiry. It invites us to confront the legacies of wealth and power not as distant abstractions, but as living forces that continue to shape our world. Through this lens, the mansion becomes not merely an artifact of the past, but a site of ongoing relevance, a place where history informs present debates and future possibilities. Its walls hold not only the echoes of industrial ambition, but also the questions of social justice, democratic accountability, and moral responsibility that remain central to public life. The Rockefeller Mansion's endurance as a historical site reflects not only its architectural resilience, but also its capacity to absorb changing meanings across generations. Each era has projected its own questions, anxieties, and aspirations onto the estate, transforming it from a private residence into a public text through which broader social narratives are read. This process of reinterpretation underscores a central truth of historical memory, that the past is never static, but continuously reconfigured in light of present concerns. In the early decades of its existence, the mansion's primary meaning lay in its embodiment of industrial success, personal discipline, and moral seriousness. It projected an image of wealth that sought legitimacy through restraint, order, and philanthropy, rather than ostentation alone. This image aligned with the cultural ideals of the Protestant bourgeoisie, which emphasized stewardship, self-control, and social responsibility as moral justifications for economic power. The mansion's design, spatial organization, and daily routines reflected these values, shaping both public perception and private self-understanding. Over time, however, the cultural framework that sustained this image began to shift. The mid-20th century witnessed profound changes in American social life, including the rise of consumer culture, mass media, and new forms of political engagement. These changes altered how wealth was perceived and how elite institutions were evaluated. The moral authority of industrial magnates and philanthropic leaders became increasingly contested, shaped by critiques of corporate power, social inequality, and environmental degradation. Within this evolving context, the Rockefeller Mansion's symbolic meaning became more complex. It no longer stood simply as a testament to industrious success and benevolent stewardship, but as a site where the contradictions of modern capitalism were made visible. Its grandeur evoked admiration, but also unease. Its philanthropic associations inspired respect, but also scrutiny. The mansion thus became a focal point for broader cultural debates about the legitimacy of wealth and the responsibilities of privilege. This shift in meaning was not abrupt, but gradual, unfolding through a series of reinterpretations shaped by scholarship, public discourse, and institutional practice. Historians began to examine the Gilded Age and Progressive Era with greater attention to inequality, labor relations, and power structures. Journalists and cultural critics explored the social and environmental consequences of industrialization. Museums and historic sites adopted interpretive frameworks that emphasized complexity, conflict, and contingency rather than triumphalist narratives. The Rockefeller Mansion, as both a private estate and a public institution, was inevitably drawn into this interpretive transformation. Its curators, historians, and administrators faced the challenge of presenting a history that was neither celebratory nor condemnatory, but analytically rigorous and ethically reflective. This required acknowledging the achievements associated with the Rockefeller legacy, while also confronting the social costs of industrial power and the limitations of elite-driven reform. This balancing act reflects a broader shift in public history toward what has been called critical commemoration. Rather than presenting the past as a sequence of heroic achievements, critical commemoration emphasizes the need to examine power, conflict, and inequality alongside accomplishment and innovation. It seeks to create spaces for dialogue, reflection, and learning, rather than reverence alone. The Rockefeller Mansion, as a site of critical commemoration, embodies this approach, offering visitors an opportunity to engage with the complexities of American industrial history. Such engagement is not merely intellectual, but emotional and moral. The mansion's physical presence evokes a visceral response, inviting awe, curiosity, and reflection. Its rooms, gardens, and artifacts create an immersive environment in which abstract concepts such as power, inequality, and responsibility become tangible. This experiential dimension of historical interpretation is particularly powerful, enabling visitors to connect with the past not only through information, but through embodied encounter. This embodied encounter, however, is shaped by narrative framing. The stories told within the mansion influence how visitors understand its significance and how they relate it to contemporary issues. Interpretive choices about emphasis, context, and perspective shape the meanings that emerge from the experience. Recognizing this, curators and historians have increasingly sought to incorporate multiple voices, perspectives, and narratives into the mansion's interpretation, reflecting the diversity of experiences and viewpoints that constitute its history. These efforts include foregrounding the experiences of workers, domestic staff, gardeners, and artisans who contributed to the estate's construction and maintenance. They also include examining the impacts of Rockefeller-funded initiatives on communities, institutions, and environments, both within the United States and globally. By broadening the scope of interpretation, the mansion's history becomes not only a story of elite power, but a tapestry of social relations, labor practices, and institutional transformations. This broadened perspective reveals the mansion as a site of interconnected histories rather than isolated privilege. It connects the estate to the oil fields of Pennsylvania, the rail networks of the Midwest, the urban neighborhoods of industrial cities, the laboratories of medical research, the classrooms of universities, and the villages of agricultural communities around the world. Through these connections, the mansion becomes a node within a global network of economic, social, and institutional relations. Understanding these connections requires moving beyond the boundaries of the estate itself to consider the broader systems in which it was embedded. The wealth that financed the mansion was generated through global markets, industrial technologies, and corporate structures that reshaped economies and societies across continents. The philanthropic institutions associated with the Rockefeller family operated within international networks of knowledge production, policy coordination, and development intervention. The mansion thus becomes a gateway to understanding the global dimensions of American industrial power. These global dimensions are particularly evident in the realm of science and medicine. Rockefeller-funded institutions played pivotal roles in advancing biomedical research, establishing public health infrastructure, and shaping international health policy. These initiatives contributed to significant improvements in disease control, medical education, and research capacity. Yet they also reflected broader patterns of Western dominance in knowledge production and institutional governance, raising questions about equity, representation, and epistemic authority. The mansion's association with these initiatives invites critical reflection on the politics of knowledge. Who defines what counts as valid knowledge? Whose expertise is recognized and institutionalized? How are research priorities determined, and whose interests do they serve? These questions are central to contemporary debates about science, policy, and global governance, and the mansion's history offers a historical lens through which to examine them. This lens also reveals the environmental dimensions of industrial power. The oil industry, which generated the Rockefeller fortune, had profound impacts on landscapes, ecosystems, and communities. Extraction, transportation, and consumption of fossil fuels reshaped environments, contributed to pollution, and altered patterns of settlement and economic activity. The mansion, as a product of this industry, thus carries an environmental legacy that extends far beyond its grounds. Recognizing this legacy invites reflection on the long-term consequences of industrialization and the responsibilities of wealth in addressing environmental challenges. It underscores the interconnectedness of economic, social, and ecological systems, highlighting the need for integrated approaches to sustainability, equity, and governance. The mansion's history, situated at the origins of the modern fossil fuel economy, becomes particularly relevant in an era of climate change and environmental crisis. This relevance extends to contemporary discussions about corporate responsibility, energy transition, and social investment. The Rockefeller legacy, which includes significant philanthropic engagement in scientific research, public health, and environmental initiatives, reflects both the origins of industrial power and its evolving responses to emerging challenges. The mansion, as a symbol of this legacy, becomes a site for examining how historical trajectories of wealth and power intersect with contemporary efforts to address global problems. In this sense, the mansion's story is not merely retrospective, but prospective. It invites us to consider how the lessons of the past might inform future choices about economic organization, social responsibility, and environmental stewardship. It challenges us to think critically about the sources of wealth, the uses of power, and the obligations of privilege in a rapidly changing world. This forward-looking dimension does not diminish the importance of historical accuracy or critical analysis. Rather, it enhances it by situating historical inquiry within contemporary ethical and political contexts. The mansion's history becomes a resource for reflection, offering insights into the dynamics of power, the possibilities of reform, and the complexities of social change. As this documentary approaches its final reflections, the Rockefeller Mansion stands as a powerful symbol of continuity and change. It embodies the enduring influence of industrial capitalism, the evolving practices of philanthropy, and the shifting meanings of wealth and responsibility. Its story reflects the tensions and possibilities inherent in modern society, offering both cautionary lessons and sources of inspiration. Through its architecture, its institutional legacy, and its ongoing interpretation, the mansion invites us to engage with the past not as a closed chapter, but as an open dialogue. It challenges us to confront the complexities of power and privilege with honesty, humility, and critical insight. It encourages us to recognize the interdependence of individual achievement and collective well-being, and to consider how history can inform more just and sustainable futures. In this spirit, the Rockefeller Mansion becomes more than a historical site. It becomes a space of inquiry, reflection, and moral imagination. Its walls, once symbols of private authority, now serve as conduits for public dialogue, connecting past and present, power and responsibility, memory and possibility. As the narrative draws closer to its conclusion, the Rockefeller Mansion emerges not simply as a historical artifact, but as a living archive of American modernity. Its stones, corridors, and landscapes hold layered meanings accumulated over more than a century, reflecting shifts in economic organization, political authority, social values, and cultural memory. To understand its full significance is to understand not only the story of one family, but the deeper structures that shaped the United States during its transformation into an industrial and global power. The mansion's earliest significance lay in its assertion of permanence in a world defined by volatility. The late 19th century was an era of rapid industrial expansion, financial speculation, labor unrest, and political uncertainty. In such a context, monumental architecture served not merely aesthetic purposes, but psychological ones. It provided reassurance that wealth could be stabilized, that power could be rooted, and that social order could be preserved. The Rockefeller Mansion, with its enduring materials and disciplined design, embodied this aspiration for continuity amid turbulence. Yet permanence in architecture does not guarantee permanence in meaning. As economic systems evolved, political institutions expanded, and cultural values shifted, the mansion's symbolism changed. What once signified stability and moral authority increasingly became a site of interrogation and reflection. Its very solidity came to stand in contrast with the fragility of social contracts, the volatility of markets, and the contested legitimacy of concentrated power. This transformation reflects a broader pattern in modern history, the tension between material endurance and moral impermanence. Institutions, buildings, and systems may persist across generations, but the values that sustain them are continually renegotiated. The Rockefeller Mansion illustrates this dynamic vividly, standing as a durable structure whose meanings have been reshaped by successive waves of social change. These waves include the expansion of democratic participation, the rise of mass movements, the development of regulatory states, and the globalization of economic and political systems. Each of these transformations altered the conditions under which wealth was accumulated, exercised, and justified. They also reshaped the expectations placed upon elite institutions and individuals, demanding greater transparency, accountability, and social engagement. Within this evolving context, the Rockefeller legacy underwent significant reinterpretation. The family's philanthropic institutions adapted to new social priorities, expanded their global reach, and refined their organizational strategies. They increasingly emphasized collaboration with public institutions, engagement with diverse communities, and responsiveness to emerging challenges such as environmental degradation, public health crises, and social inequality. These adaptations reflect both continuity and change, preserving certain institutional frameworks while revising their goals and methods. The mansion, as a symbolic center of this legacy, mirrors these adaptations. Its transformation into a site of public history, education, and cultural engagement reflects a broader shift toward openness and dialogue. Where once access was restricted, now interpretation invites inquiry. Where once authority was asserted, now history is examined. This shift does not erase the mansion's origins, but situates them within a more inclusive and reflective narrative. This inclusivity extends beyond national boundaries. The global dimensions of Rockefeller philanthropy and industrial power are now integral to the mansion's interpretation. Visitors and scholars alike are encouraged to consider how decisions made in elite American spaces influence lives and institutions across continents. This global perspective reveals the interconnectedness of economic systems, the diffusion of institutional models, and the transnational circulation of ideas, technologies, and resources. Such interconnectedness underscores the importance of ethical reflection in historical interpretation. The benefits generated by industrial power and philanthropic intervention cannot be fully understood without acknowledging their uneven distribution and unintended consequences. The mansion's history invites us to confront these complexities, to recognize both the achievements and the costs of modernity, and to resist narratives that reduce history to either triumph or tragedy alone. This resistance to simplification is central to the documentary's purpose. The Rockefeller Mansion is not presented as a moral exemplar or a cautionary tale, but as a site of inquiry into the structures and contradictions of power. Its story reveals how wealth can generate both innovation and inequality, how philanthropy can foster both reform and dependency, and how architecture can both symbolize authority and invite critique. These contradictions are not anomalies, but defining features of modern social life. They reflect the inherent tensions within capitalist economies, democratic institutions, and global systems of governance. The mansion's history offers a concrete case through which to explore these tensions, grounding abstract debates in material reality and historical context. In doing so, the mansion becomes a lens for examining broader questions about legitimacy and trust. How do societies determine who deserves wealth and power? What obligations accompany privilege? How are authority and accountability balanced in complex institutional systems? These questions have shaped political theory, social movements, and public policy across centuries, and they remain central to contemporary discourse. The Rockefeller Mansion's enduring presence allows these questions to be revisited across time, connecting past debates to present challenges. It invites reflection not only on the origins of wealth, but on its uses, not only on the accumulation of power, but on its regulation and redistribution. It challenges us to consider how historical legacies shape contemporary possibilities, and how present choices will shape future narratives. As the documentary approaches its final cadence, it becomes clear that the mansion's greatest significance lies not in its grandeur, but in its capacity to provoke sustained reflection. It stands as a physical reminder that power leaves traces, that wealth shapes landscapes, and that history is embedded in space. It also stands as a reminder that these traces are not inert. They are interpreted, contested, and reimagined across generations. This reimagining is essential to the vitality of historical memory. Without it, monuments become relics and narratives become dogma. With it, history becomes a resource for critical thinking, ethical reflection, and civic engagement. The Rockefeller Mansion, through its evolving interpretation, exemplifies this dynamic, serving as a site where history is not only preserved, but interrogated. This interrogation is not an act of negation, but of engagement. It does not seek to erase the past, but to understand it more fully, to acknowledge its complexities, and to draw lessons that can inform present and future choices. In this sense, the mansion's story is not closed, but ongoing, shaped by new questions, new evidence, and new perspectives. The enduring relevance of the Rockefeller Mansion thus lies in its capacity to connect individual biography with structural history, private life with public consequence, and architectural form with social meaning. It offers a vantage point from which to examine the intertwined trajectories of industrialization, philanthropy, governance, and social change. It invites us to consider how power is constructed, how it is exercised, and how it can be transformed. As we reach the final reflections of this documentary, the mansion stands not only as a symbol of past wealth, but as a site of ongoing dialogue about the responsibilities of power in a democratic society. Its story challenges us to move beyond simplistic judgments, to embrace complexity, and to engage thoughtfully with the legacies of modernity. In doing so, it offers not a conclusion, but an invitation to continue questioning, learning, and reflecting on the structures that shape our world. The Rockefeller Mansion, through its history and its continuing interpretation, becomes a space where such reflection is not only possible, but essential. The Rockefeller Mansion ultimately stands as a quiet yet commanding witness to the forces that shaped modern America. It does not speak in proclamations or slogans, but in stone, proportion, and endurance. Its significance lies not only in what it represents, but in what it compels us to confront. The relationship between wealth and responsibility, between power and legitimacy, between private ambition and public consequence. At its origin, the mansion emerged from a world defined by industrial expansion, market consolidation, and institutional experimentation. It was built at a moment when economic power was rapidly reorganizing society, reshaping cities, labor systems, political institutions, and cultural norms. The wealth that financed it came not from inheritance or conquest, but from corporate integration, technological innovation, and the transformation of energy systems. In this sense, the mansion embodies a distinctly modern form of power, rooted not in land or lineage, but in capital, organization, and infrastructure. Yet modern power, unlike traditional forms of authority, lacks inherited legitimacy. It must justify itself not through divine right or hereditary succession, but through performance, contribution, and perceived social benefit. The Rockefeller Mansion reflects this imperative. Its restraint, order, and moral symbolism were not merely aesthetic choices, but cultural strategies intended to situate wealth within a framework of civic responsibility and moral seriousness. The mansion's architecture thus becomes a form of argument, asserting that power, when properly disciplined, can coexist with democratic values. This argument, however, was never uncontested. From the outset, industrial power provoked resistance, skepticism, and reform. Labor movements, regulatory agencies, journalists, and political leaders challenged the concentration of economic authority and sought to impose limits, protections, and accountability. The Rockefeller legacy evolved within this contested environment, shaped as much by external pressure as by internal conviction. The mansion, as a physical and symbolic center of that legacy, reflects this ongoing negotiation between authority and accountability. The rise of philanthropy as a central feature of elite power must be understood within this context. Philanthropy was not simply an expression of generosity, but a structural response to the moral and political challenges posed by industrial capitalism. It sought to align private wealth with public good, to translate economic power into social legitimacy, and to stabilize social systems disrupted by rapid economic change. The Rockefeller Mansion, as a site of philanthropic strategy, stands as a testament to this effort. Yet philanthropy itself is not free from contradiction. It redistributes resources without redistributing power, addresses symptoms without always confronting causes, and operates within institutional frameworks shaped by elite priorities. The mansion's history reflects both the achievements and the limitations of philanthropic reform. It reveals how private wealth can catalyze innovation, build institutions, and improve lives, while also shaping agendas, defining problems, and constraining alternative visions of social change. This duality is not an anomaly, but a defining feature of modern governance. In complex societies, power is exercised through networks of institutions, organizations, and norms, rather than through singular authorities. Private actors, public agencies, and civil society organizations interact in dynamic and often contested ways. The Rockefeller Mansion, as a site where these interactions were negotiated and coordinated, becomes a microcosm of modern institutional power. This institutional power is subtle, diffuse, and often invisible. It operates through expertise, funding, research, policy influence, and cultural authority rather than through direct command. Its effects are long-term, systemic, and difficult to trace to any single decision or actor. The mansion's significance lies in its role as a locus of such power, a space where influence was cultivated, relationships were forged, and strategies were developed that would shape social systems for generations. Understanding this form of power requires a shift in perspective. It requires moving beyond narratives of individual achievement or moral character and toward an analysis of structures, systems, and processes. It requires recognizing that wealth is not merely a personal attribute, but a social relation embedded in economic systems, legal frameworks, and cultural norms. The mansion's history invites such an analysis, offering a tangible point of entry into the abstract dynamics of modern power. This analytical shift also requires confronting the emotional dimensions of power. Wealth evokes admiration and resentment, aspiration and suspicion, hope and fear. These emotions shape public discourse, political movements, and cultural narratives. The Rockefeller Mansion, as a symbol of extraordinary wealth, has elicited such responses across generations, reflecting broader emotional currents in American society. Its enduring presence invites us to examine not only the material dimensions of power, but also its psychological and cultural resonances. These resonances are particularly evident in the tension between individualism and collectivism. American culture has long celebrated individual achievement, self-reliance, and entrepreneurial success. At the same time, it has grappled with the social consequences of inequality, exploitation, and exclusion. The Rockefeller Mansion embodies this tension, standing as both a monument to individual and corporate success and a reminder of the collective systems and labor that made such success possible. This recognition invites a more relational understanding of wealth and power. It shifts attention from isolated actors to interconnected networks, from individual decisions to systemic patterns, from personal morality to institutional design. The mansion's history thus becomes a case study in the social production of power, revealing how economic structures, political institutions, cultural values, and architectural forms converge to shape historical outcomes. As we reflect on this convergence, the mansion's relevance to contemporary society becomes increasingly apparent. In an era marked by technological transformation, economic inequality, environmental crisis, and institutional distrust, the questions raised by the Rockefeller legacy remain unresolved. How should wealth be regulated? How should power be exercised? How should responsibility be distributed? How can societies balance innovation with equity, efficiency with justice, growth with sustainability? The mansion does not provide definitive answers to these questions, but it offers historical context for engaging them. It reminds us that current challenges have deep roots, that contemporary debates echo earlier struggles, and that institutional responses evolve through conflict, negotiation, and reform. It invites us to learn from the past not by replicating its solutions, but by understanding its dilemmas. In this sense, the mansion becomes a pedagogical space, not in the narrow sense of instruction, but in the broader sense of moral and civic learning. It encourages critical thinking about power, reflection on responsibility, and dialogue about the kind of society we wish to inhabit. It challenges us to consider how historical legacies shape present possibilities and future obligations. This challenge is not merely intellectual, it is ethical. It calls upon us to examine our own relationships to wealth, power, and responsibility, whether as beneficiaries, critics, participants, or observers. It invites us to reflect on how we justify inequality, how we address social need, and how we imagine collective well-being. The mansion's story thus becomes a mirror through which we can examine our own values and assumptions. As this documentary reaches its conclusion, the Rockefeller Mansion stands not as a final statement, but as an enduring question. It asks what it means to wield power in a democratic society, how wealth should be used and constrained, and how history should inform present action. It invites us to recognize that the legacies of industrial power are not confined to the past, but continue to shape the structures, institutions, and possibilities of contemporary life. In the end, the mansion's significance lies not in its grandeur, but in its capacity to illuminate the complexities of modern power. It reveals how wealth can shape institutions, how institutions shape society, and how society in turn reshapes the meanings of wealth. It stands as a testament to the intertwined histories of ambition and reform, authority and accountability, private interest and public good. Through its enduring presence, the Rockefeller Mansion reminds us that history is not merely a record of what was, but a resource for understanding what is and imagining what might be. It invites us to engage with the past not as distant spectators, but as participants in an ongoing dialogue about power, responsibility, and the future of society.